I should mention, by the way, that we have electrodes in the chair, so that if at any point there's any untruths or lack of candor coming out, he will be shocked. Let's start at the obvious. What are you going to do when you leave ICANN?
Oh my God, that question again? I've lost count of the number of people who there's nothing else to talk about. I haven't got a clue. She hasn't told me yet. I'm sure I'll take a little time off, and I'm sure I'll find some ways to get in trouble. I've got a couple of things on my mind that I'll probably poke into, but it's been the nature of my life that whatever plans I think I've made, that's not what actually happened.
Life gets in the way? Life
gets in the way. And the true story, I was reflecting on my life about projects started and not completed and other things that went along. And on separate occasions, I shocked both of my young children when I said, if I were going to write my autobiography, I think the title would be Salvage Operation. It's just one thing after another. But this project seems to be working out pretty well.
Will you still be coming to ICANN meetings? Will you come to ICANN meetings when you leave the board?
There was. You remember Kleinrock talked about travel budgets? We'll see.
If there's a single message, if there's one thing you want to leave with the community, with this room, what would it be?
Well, keep it loose. We're all here with quite a bit of seriousness of purpose, and we all bring the best of our skills and our personality and our energy. But it is important to survive the experience. The picture up behind here, which is enormously moving, is my family. And there are things even as big as the internet is, and even as big as ICANN is. Staying connected to the people you're close to, I think, is absolutely fundamental. So that's what I would, manage your energy, manage your temperament, and engage vigorously, and enjoy and survive the experience. That's what I would say.
Steve has always been, yes. Steve has always been the consummate pro. Many of you may know that at the end of these meetings, we do kind of wrap-up video interviews with the CEO and the chair. And oftentimes this happens like early in the morning on a Friday, and we all know what it's like after an ICANN meeting. You're exhausted, you're dead, you're tired, and the last thing these guys want to do is show up early on a Friday morning to sit in front of a video camera to be grilled about how great the meeting was, et cetera, et cetera. But Steve always was there early and was always dressed to the hilt. Steve Foddy, welcome. It's very early Friday morning here in Singapore. ICANN 52 ended only about 12 hours ago. Steve, can you tell us, did the airline lose your pants?
So Brad, I'm glad you asked that question.
So the question that has to be asked, the obvious one, walking shorts, really? Walking shorts?
I got up that morning and I thought, another interview with Brad. What can we do to raise his energy levels so that it's not just another one of these boring things? And so I needed to find a way to get you going.
The thing that amazes me about you and about Nee and so many of the people that I have come to know in this community, in this world, I was a journalist for a number of years, and I always tended to equate power with arrogance. All of you people you maximize humility. I've never seen you get overly excited. You're always reasonable, you're calm, and you're humble. What is that? Where does that come from?
So you had a number of people comment on some element of my technical prowess and understanding. And I've applied that very, very strongly to understand one thing most important, which is there's no power at all. I've got no power. And so the humility comes very easily with that.
Is there something that is one particular issue that is hanging that you didn't quite see reach fruition before your departure at the end of the week that you kind of wish you could have seen the end of?
Yeah, Brad. Joran made a joke at the opening about really wanting to kill off the early morning opening sessions and that he had not yet accomplished it. And I remember my thinking was, you got a very short list, I can give you a much longer list. Sure, there's always unfinished business. We have some major issues hanging, and it'll keep us busy for quite a while. This is you can look at this in positive or negative, glass half full, glass half empty sort of thing. We've accomplished a huge amount. We have to sort out the silly who is problem. We have to straighten out various other things. You're looking at your watch?
Oh, you're boring me. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
when are you going to pick it up here?
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll move on.
It's just another boring interview with Brad. Come on.
I do want to comment, if I might, on some of what you just heard. I made a few quick notes. First of all, I was extremely moved, Dr. Zhao, by your support. As we all know, the history of ICANN and ITU has been through multiple phases, and I think your stewardship is as crucial as anything in the positive state that we're in. Brad, you made some comment about how we were working on the network instead of chasing girls.
I'm sorry, how we were?
We were working on this network stuff instead of chasing girls?
Yes.
It wasn't instead of.
No, wait
It took us a long time. We weren't very successful at first until finally, after quite a long time, I did succeed, and Beth has been absolutely amazing. A number of people have commented about how I brought stability. Each time, and particularly the first time that was mentioned, Beth giggled. She probably said some other things that, anyway. Another thing that occurred to me is Kleinrock talked about the early days and the beginnings of the ARPANET. There were a handful of us from the first 4 sites in the western part of the United States. Yes, we traveled by comparison. It was nothing compared to today. We never, ever imagined that the small activity that we were engaged in, the handful of conversations and the relatively narrow issues of how do you technically interconnect a bunch of heterogeneous machines and make them all work and so forth, would blossom totally out of control to where you would need an organization that only kept track of numbers and names. I mean, what a silly idea. The idea that this represents success is just outrageous, and we just have to keep at it. One other small piece of insight. Vint and I got to be good friends in high school and remained friends for our entire lives. And he's far more adept at all this political stuff and quite a bit of other things. And he wound up being chairman of ICANN, second chairman after Esther Dyson. And the Security and Stability Advisory Committee was created shortly after 9/11, when every organization in the world, I think, took a look at security issues. And in short order, SSAC was formed. And Vinton invited me to, it was information, people were being invited, and Vinton called me up and said, I'd like you to chair this and just get it started. 6 months will be enough. It's 2002. And, you know, Vince's a straight shooter, but even so, I understood that it probably wasn't going to fit in 6 months because I don't work that fast. So I figured, okay, 2 years. 1 year into it, we changed CEOs, and meanwhile, I had some calibration about how things were going. I said, well, I'll give him 2 years, total 3 years. Things went along. There was a position on the board as liaison from the organization. I said, well, I'll do that as a way of facilitating the security story and mission. Certainly nobody else on the Security and Stability Advisory Committee wanted to come within 10 feet of any ICANN politics, and so there was just a service aspect of that. And I got more involved and more involved. I'm still running SSAC, and I'm involved with the board, and I thought, how am I going to get out of this gracefully, you know, with just a modicum of dignity, and I can't just sort of walk away. I hit it. If I could just slide over from a liaison, non-voting position over to a voting position, which have 3-year terms, and you're only allowed to have 3 of them, that I would have an exit plan from being chair of SSAC. And what you're witnessing, folks, is the successful completion, one of the very few successes that I have in my life, of my 10-year plan for stepping down as chair of SSAC. I got to say, this doesn't feel real. I am truly honored and quite humbled to be in the company of people that I view as giants and really accomplished people who've made everything happen, and it's a privilege to be among you. This is more than I could ever have imagined. Speaking of getting away from the model in here, let me come back to Chairman Zhao, Secretary General Zhao. It's not just the ITU, but the whole standards process I kind of shied away from early on as we're developing the early protocols on the ARPANET, and people started to mention standards processes. Why would I want to do that? And veered off and did some other things, and now gotten involved in the magnitude of what we've accomplished, the magnitude of the events that have swallowed all of us up and that bring us into truly world important activities and things that have made a difference and have intersected with the establishments of governments, with intergovernmental organizations, is certainly well beyond. People ask me, how much could you have seen about the ARPANET when we started, and usually the focus is on the different technologies that are involved or the different services, but from a governance point of view, this is far, far above anything that I could have imagined. And in my particular sort of organization of the world, having Secretary General Zhao here far exceeds. I mean, I expected it, maybe Al Gore, but Zhao. Now we're in Fat City.
Steve mentioned Beth. He told me once that his running joke with Beth is that they're on their second date. He said it's been a very long second date, more than 40 years. I know that Beth is notoriously spotlight shy, but I wonder, come on up here, Beth.
You're supposed to move your arms like.
Is that what?
It's sort of peculiar that I'm up here. The planning committee nagged me enough, so I finally said, okay, and I wasn't convinced that when the day arrived, I'd actually get up on stage with him. But I've really spent this week, I mean, there's only 2 days left, and counting, sort of looking you all over and realizing what you've been to Steve, what a family you've been. Yes, he's been here 15 years, and luckily our kids were grown by the time he got involved. I'm not sure I would have been as satisfied with his involvement back if the kids had been around. And in reality, he's failed me a little. He neglected to celebrate anniversaries at times, but compared to this, that seemed minor. The time he left me in a hospital thousands of miles from home because he had to leave for ICANN, and I was going to have to find how to get home. It wasn't his fault. I encouraged him because I knew if he had to sit there and wait for me to get discharged, he'd be antsy, you know. And when I look around, the only thing I can really say is thank you to all of you. You've really taken him in. You've taught him a lot. You've accepted who he is. I mean, when I first dated him and got to LA, and there was a woman in the play group with my kids who had actually been a secretary at UCLA, and when she heard I was married to Steve Crocker, she said, "You married him?" So the warmth you all show and the learning, he writes thank you notes faster than he ever did before. And I'm sure if his mother could see him, she'd just be thrilled. And this is all due to you, all of you. And the thing that impressed me tonight is that it sounds like Steve's done a lot as board chair. But when I recognize we've been reminiscing, who's been on the board over the years? The CEOs from Paul Toomey, Rod Beckstrom, Fadi, and now Jorn. It's been special, really special, and I'm a spouse. I mean, how often does a spouse get up on stage and get to say all of this? It's really been remarkable. George and Bruce Tonkin have really been behind Steve. If George hadn't run the 2 selection committees, I don't know that Steve really would be here. It's been just a wonderful, wild ride, and it's just so many people in front of me at the moment that I'd like to thank you for taking care of him. I think it's been 15 years where he neglected his health. He'd never worried about his wardrobe, but you all took him on. He fell asleep at meetings. I would be on the internet back home, and I'd write him a note, sit up, smile. I never thought I'd be that kind of wife, but it's taken me over. I worry about all of you, and I've had such wonderful friendships from many of you. We hear from people like Renalia when she goes back home. I mean, I'm staring at you thinking, Sue and Fadi, it's just been remarkable. And it's sad, bittersweet, but I hope we'll hear from all of you. Vonda, I don't see, but South America, and Demi, and Akram. Akram has been behind Steve in ways that I don't think everybody recognizes. If there was a crisis, it was Akram. And I'm just the wife, but I know he's been supported, and I thank you all. And I know that when you ask him what he's going to do, I've got it solved. He's going to see a psychiatrist quite quickly. But the other thing I want to warn you about is my dream. When I come back in my next life, I'm going to have legs, and I'm going to be on the non-com.
Actually, your application is already filled out. You'll be in front of the NomCom shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. One last round of applause for Steve Crocker and Beth.
Thank you. Thank you. Look at all those people.
Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are refreshments in the back, so please help yourself. Socialize with Steve and Beth personally. Thank you.